general cultural modeling for the purpose of understanding what drives innovation cultures, what makes a great hire. So it's one thing to say someone's great at Java. I'd actually like to be able to say they're great at Java and they're great for your company, and here's how to get the best out of them. Paired well with that is my other company, which is in ed tech. Is based on technology I developed to model whether students understand the material by just listening to them talk. So we take free-form discussions, and our goal is no more high-stakes testing. If I can predict the test, why ever have it? I'm still a visiting scholar at UC Berkeley, and now just joined as an advisor to the Typepool Foundation, which is Mozilla for diabetes software. So free open source. And then I download some other things.
In all your free time?
Oh, the 2 kids.
Well, I considered a career in classical music, so maybe I can audition for your musical. So the ECD market is basically bank certificates of deposit. It's a very old traditional market. The problem is if you're a corporation and you want to buy 10, 20, 30, $50 million in bank CDs, you don't, because you would have to go to 40, 50, 60, 100 banks and open CD by CD by CD because it's $250,000 max on FDIC insurance. So we've created an application that has a patented matching algorithm where buyers can come in and buy in bulk, banks come in and list. We match them up based on the criteria, they push a button and they buy the CDs, and everything's electronic. So if you want to talk to me about creating a new marketplace, then go ahead, because I have lots of stories about that. The other company that is we just filed the LLC papers, waiting to get that back from the state of Illinois, and then we'll file for 501c3. It's GoRaise, and the idea originally was to kind of let people, if they're working out, if they're running a marathon, if they're training, if they're doing something to get fit, to allow them to set a goal, ask their friends to support them in that goal, let them pick a charity, and then when they complete that goal, that money would actually then go to the charity that they've chosen. So it could be, I'm going to run the Chicago Marathon, or it could be I'm going to run 10 miles a week for Johnny's school, and I'm going to do that for the next 3 months, and when I do, give money to whatever charity I've chosen. We're kind of taking a pivot right now before we even get launched, what we're realizing, and this is kind of one of the things about kind of lean startup methodology that I do buy into, is kind of what's the minimal viable product, and how do you scale. We looked at that, and we weren't sure what those two things would be, and so now we're kind of pivoting and saying, how do we help races? Because races really don't play a big role in raising money for charities. And so we're trying to kind of figure out how we kind of use that as the platform to springboard us into what we want to do, and still have the other component so that people can get fit and raise money for charity at the same time. I'm also heavily involved in a lot of not-for-profits, but that's really not the same thing, so we'll pass.
I'm a professor.
At what point in the company development are you looking for funding, and what do you recommend as far as that?
So she's asking, at what point in the company's development are you looking for funding? What do you recommend about that?
When you actually need the money then.
Well, I mean,
no, I was joking, but what I mean is the best companies are the ones where you actually never have to raise money from someone. If you're ever in a position of being able to do that, by far, it's like, I have had both experiences, running a bootstrapped company, getting it to be profitable, as well as raising a lot of money and selling the company even before revenue. So it's kind of it goes all the way from one end to the other. It depends on ultimately what your goal is, and are you building, first of all, are you building a company that will have either as an exit, the ability to be sold to someone or to raise funds on the public market? Those are the opportunities that professional investors like business angels and venture capital especially are interested in. If you are building a business that can be a fantastic business, making money every year but never reaches that point, then raising money from those kind of investors is not particularly the right thing either. Money can be helpful to get started. Money can be helpful to grow. Again, there's different sources of investment at different types of inflections of your company. The longer you can go without raising money, the better it is.
Yeah, so one of the first times I ever had an interaction with VCs was a panel, and it was actually, it was organized, strangely enough, I think it was an LGBT sort of type event, and kind of the only women partners I've ever really interacted with. I've never pitched to a women partner. Certainly affects my perception of what it's like to pitch to VCs. But she said, our goal is to find you after you need us, but before you realize it. So my very first company, we were EdTech, this was before the sort of recent EdTech boom. We went to VCs and we said, we can tell what students are thinking, and it's mind reading, and they said, wow. One Canaan Venture said, $2 million if you'll do financial fraud protection. And pretty soon we got pushed away from educational technology, which is why we eventually sold the company and moved on to other things. So, there, the question of when was the right time to raise money, well, it was actually to have waited for a market change that I didn't realize was going to come in the next couple of years. And in some sense, we were a little too early for people to support what we were doing. So there's things that you can't control and can't know about that are hard to know. The second company, Socos, we actually bootstrapped. It's been slow growth, but it's, now it's gotten a lot of attention. Keynote at South by Southwest, very exciting. But we did it totally without venture backing. And I totally agree with you that largely it's about, do you perceive, not just that you will have the kind of growth that Lorenzo referred to, but that it's going to be on the timescale necessary for a fund, where they need to pay their limited partners back at a certain period so that they're going to get investments on their next round. And if they think they're going to have to sit on you for 10 years, but it'll pay off then, that's not good enough. So different aspects, it depends on the market, it depends on whether you're talking about angels or VC, but it becomes very contextual.
You can also, the question often arises sort of, when will they actually listen to you? When will they take a look at you? And you can think of everything you do with your business as risk reduction, right? So each step you take is reducing risk. So the first thing you have to reduce the risk on is feasibility. Can you actually make the product you're talking about, and will it actually do what you say it's going to do, right? Can you actually deliver the service? Then you gotta take out the risk of saleability. Will anybody pay you for it, and are you capable of bringing it to market, right? Then you gotta sort of, take out the risk of duplication. Can you sell this more than once, and can you kind of get good at that, and do you actually deliver on the value proposition? And then you move into questions of scalability. So if this thing grows, is it profitable? How big can it grow? Each one of those things that you're doing is taking risk out of the equation and increasing the investor's interest in you, right? And so one of my favorite things is I was told when I was working on a company, a fashion company, I was told, you can come pitch to us when you have an order from Barney's. And I thought, if I had an order from Barney's, I wouldn't need to be pitching to you, right? It seems like they are always super excited about you, one step too late in your business, right? And you're always going after them one step too early in your business. So you're trying to get that trajectory of lowering risk at the same time as you're raising value.
I'll just make it quick. I'll just add. So I've invested in some startups also, and I've watched them, and one of them has now raised probably 3 or 4 rounds of funding more than I would really like to see, because it just eludes me. ECD, when I came on board, had just raised a major round of funding, and the original founders were spending a tremendous amount of money. I mean, we have banks as customers. We're not a regulated entity, but we have customer data that we get before the bank, so we treat it as though with the same security level that a bank would. And so they went out and built this entire back-end platform that's on Erlang and immensely redundant and everything else, and hugely costly. I mean, they really could have started the product out on a server, and they could have had this plan, and they could have. They're not in the room, and so. And none of you probably know them. So, you know, they could have started it out much, much smaller, and they burned through an awful lot of cash. And I think I've seen that, you know, a number of times. People go and they'll get around to funding, and they'll start doing all of these things that really aren't critical. It's not the minimal amount that you need to do at that time in order to get your product, you know, in front of a customer, test it, you know, try it out, make some changes, get it out again, and test it again. And so, you know, when, you know, one of the things I had to do, when I came on, they had like 20 developers. And, you know, I have a couple developers now. You know, I mean, I let them all go because, you know, we just didn't need them. We didn't need a big back end. And, you know, in some of the startups that I've invested in, you know, they bought mahogany from Brazil for, you know, bar counters. It looks awesome. But you know what? They could have spent, you know, a third of that and done just fine. And because they had a lot of cash. So, you know, I don't, you know, if you do need money, so I guess the moral of that is, you know, getting money can be dangerous because you all of a sudden start spending it, and it goes out very quickly, and raising money is extremely time consuming and takes a lot of energy.
Building that infrastructure, isn't that a selling point too? I mean,
At the right point.
She asked if building the infrastructure isn't a selling point. I think the point that Joel's making is a really, really good one. How many of you own a DVR? How many of you own a TiVo? An actual TiVo box as opposed to a Comcast or a, right? So TiVo came to market, it had unlimited funds, it spent them all the wrong way. It was one of the slowest market adoptions of a radical new technology in our lifetime. It now has about 6% of the DVR market. It's never been profitable. So you can make a lot of mistakes having too little cash, and you can make a lot of mistakes having too much cash. Do we have any last questions? Because I think we have to wrap up pretty soon, yeah?
Just a quick question. So we spoke a little bit about some of the challenges some of you have felt like LGBT maybe being a little bit harder to break into a place where, you know, it's a network where people are looking for people like themselves. Can some of you speak to how your LGBT network and being LGBT has actually benefited you in terms of building your business?
The story that I like to tell is, as I said, I helped co-found StartOut, and the reasons why I've mentioned plenty. But for the very first, I would say for the first year, here's this nonprofit organization, and part of the reason for it to exist and for me to work on it was that I felt like it was something where we wanted also to give back, and I started feeling really guilty because I was getting a tremendous amount of value out of it, just in terms of the networking and the just natural inclination of people wanting to be helpful to those who share an experience, to those who share a challenge, to those who share something, you know, that they have something in common. And that's, you know, something we know from affinity group all over, but it's definitely been the case. So for me, StartOut as a conduit has created even an amplifier for you know, connecting with LGBT entrepreneurs and LGBT people who were naturally inclined to help, answer, mentor, and vice versa. So.
Sure. So I'm not going to talk about this in a personal perspective, but I'll go for the research here.
Go for the research.
There's a ton of research on the sorts of things that drive innovation cultures and drive entrepreneurial cultures. In fact, there was just a paper in PNAS this year on what are the predictive factors of Schumpeterian entrepreneurship, and I had some problems with that particular paper myself, but some recent surveys show they went to actual entrepreneurs and say, hey, well, how do you make your decisions? Where you found your company? And it turns out talent and culture were the #1 decision makers. You know, things like taxes and, you know, the local, you know, there certainly needs to be some money flow in terms of VCs, but really people are thinking, where can I get the talent I need for my company, and where are the cultural drivers that are going to attract that talent? So I pair that up with other research. I referred, for example, to Richard, Florida, where, you know, there's strong correlations between the kind of local cultures that drive really strong economies, that drive entrepreneurial, you know, in San Francisco, and New York, and Vancouver, and Toronto, and London, and places that have really strong, inclusive LGBT communities and general environments. And then lastly, you look at groups like TIE, so this is the Southeast Indian sort of affinity network group, and the success, again, particularly in the tech world, that the sort of Indian and Pakistani communities have had really breaking in and going against this common story that I told, that if you're not part of the original affinity group, you can't get in. Well, they played it to their strength. They said, hey, no one wants to treat us as anything other than commodity engineers, so let's get together ourselves and create our own networks. And the amazing thing is when you do that, and this can be true of our group here, I was referring to it earlier, you can do that and you can go to some place that has no entrepreneurial culture, doesn't have the density, which is one of the big predictors, the density really necessary to create sort of like a tech community. But if you artificially create that amongst your affinity group, you know, whether it's a lesbian or, you know, there's lesbians in tech and there's trans hack and of course there's StartOut, you can actually outperform the local economy. You know, you can create that nugget of sort of networking and social life that's necessary for an innovation economy, even when everyone else around you is missing out on it. So in that sense, at least speaking abstractly and academically, this is a positive.
I'll just be really quick. I mean, certainly nobody's sat here and said, hey, you're gay, let me write you a check. So, you know, that hasn't happened. You know, being gay is an integral part of who I am, and at times in life it's caused challenges and difficulties that I've had to learn to overcome. And, you know, it's helped define who I am. And so I think, you know, it's part of me, and that has benefited me. I mean, I think there are many business challenges that, you know, I have faced that I can face better and more effectively because I, you know, have been gay. And, you know, back when I was young, there was a fair amount of discrimination. And so it's made me stronger, it's made me more effective. And I'll say that being open has been very beneficial. I mean, I have some very strong, close personal relationships with some, you know, the VCs that we work with, just because, you know, I've been open about my life, and, you know, they know my husband, I know their wives, and you know, we hang out together, and so it's facilitated those bonds. So I think that it can be very, very positive. I can't, you know, say, you know, I got this job because of it, or anything like that, but I definitely think it's been valuable and it's helped me.
Well, I think we've just all added 3 really awesome entrepreneurs to our networks, and I think we should thank them for coming here and sharing their experience.
So I just want to do one. It's very fun. I just want to do one last quick thank you guys again for coming. I'm one of the co-chairs for Pride Groupon. My other co-chair isn't here tonight, but his name is Peter Schwartz. I'm Amy Silverman. We actually have a Twitter handle for Pride Groupon. We put on a lot of professional development events like this and other awesome events. It's at Groupon Pride. So if you guys have a Twitter account, definitely please follow us, and you can stay up to date. We also have some flyers on the table over there that you guys can grab. I know that StartOut has a couple of things coming up in the coming weeks and months that James wants to chat about, but again, I want to thank you guys for coming. Also, if you have any interest in partnering with Pride Groupon, email pride@groupon.com, and it'll go right to Peter and I. Thanks, and James. We used to work with James. He used to be a co-chair.
Yeah, founding co-chair.
That's right.
All right, thanks, fast. Thank you guys so much. Vivienne, Joel, Lorenzo, Waverly. Really appreciate you guys. Fantastic panel. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Our next event is already on the calendars. It's April 3rd. If you have an idea and you want to pitch to VCs, come out, submit your deck to me. We're going to regret this, james.van@startout.com. Send me your decks. We're going to look at them. We're going to have a pitch contest. There are prizes provided by Orbitz, who's in the audience. Thank you very much. So really appreciate you guys coming out. This is the very first event in Chicago. So you're founding members. It's awesome to have you guys here. Like us on Facebook, tweet about us, email me all your questions and comments and the events you want to see. I really appreciate everybody coming out. So thank you. Thank you to Groupon.